The idea of normal is one of the most damaging and limiting myths we've inherited, and it shapes the way people see themselves in school, at work, and in life. Normal didn't come from nature or biology. It came from a man with a ruler. In the 1800s, a Belgian mathematician named Adolphe Quetelet applied statistics to human beings and created the concept of the average man. From there, the word normal became the gold standard against which everyone was measured. But here's the truth: nobody is actually average in every category. The average person doesn't exist in real life. It's a statistical fiction. Yet somehow, society built entire systems, especially education, on this measuring stick. If you fit close enough to the average, you're considered normal. If you don't, you're labeled broken, lazy, or in need of fixing. The damage of this myth begins early. A kid struggling to read is compared to an arbitrary timeline for normal reading development and told they're behind. A student who can't sit still in a classroom is seen as disruptive, not as someone whose brain is wired for movement. These labels stick, and over time, they become part of how people see themselves. Instead of asking how the system can adapt to different ways of learning, the system asks how the individual can be fixed to fit the system. The myth of normal turns human diversity into a problem instead of celebrating it as a strength. Normal also creates an invisible hierarchy. Those who fit into the narrow definition of normal get access to opportunities, resources, and validation. Those who don't have to fight twice as hard just to be seen as capable. And here's the kicker: many of the people who changed the world didn't fit normal at all. Albert Einstein didn't talk until he was 4. Thomas Edison was labeled adult by his teachers. Temple Grandin has openly shared her autism diagnosis. These people succeeded not because they conformed to normal, but because they embraced the unique ways they thought, saw, and interacted with the world. The myth of normal also fuels shame. Shame grows in the gap between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be. Is the standard. Most people will always feel like they fall short. They hide their differences, pretend to fit in, and spend enormous energy masking their authentic selves. This is exhausting, and it robs people of the chance to live fully as who they are. The pursuit of normal can turn life into a performance rather than a journey of discovery. Breaking free from the myth starts with awareness. It means recognizing that normal is a cultural invention, not a natural truth. It means rejecting the idea that differences need to be erased or hidden. It means reframing diversity, not as a deviation from normal, but as the baseline of human existence. Every brain, every body, every way of processing the world is part of the natural spectrum of humanity. In reality, diversity is the norm. In schools, this shift changes everything. Instead of teaching to the mythical middle, educators can design environments that work for a wide range of learners from the start. This is the heart of universal design, creating systems that are flexible enough to serve people with different strengths, needs, and styles. It's about replacing what's wrong with you with what's right with the way you think, and how can we build on that? In life beyond school, rejecting the myth of normal frees people to create lives that fit them, not lives squeezed into someone else's mold. It opens space for careers built around strengths instead of weaknesses. It gives permission to pursue relationships, hobbies, and goals that reflect who you are, not who you've been told to be. And it dismantles the quiet, constant pressure to measure yourself against a ruler that was never meant to fit you in the first place. The most liberating truth is that the opposite of normal isn't broken, it's original. And originality is what moves the world forward. When people stop chasing normal and start embracing their differences, they stop trying to live up to an impossible fiction and start living into their own extraordinary reality. The myth of normal only has power if you believe it. The moment you stop, you open the door to an entirely different way of being, one where you're enough exactly as you are. Deficit thinking is a lens that focuses almost entirely on what a person lacks rather than on what they bring to the table. It's the voice that says, "You're not good at this," instead of, "Here's what you do well." In education, this mindset shows up in the way students are often described, by their limitations, diagnoses, or struggles, without equal attention to their strengths. A student who has dyslexia might be defined as can't read well, instead of being recognized for exceptional problem-solving skills or creative thinking. Someone with ADHD might be labeled as distracted, without acknowledgement of their energy, adaptability, or ability to think in unconventional ways. When this deficit first framing becomes the default, it not only shapes how others see the individual, but also how that person sees themselves. Deficit thinking is dangerous because it narrows possibilities. If the conversation about a person starts and ends with their challenges, then the solutions will almost always revolve around fixing or compensating for those perceived shortcomings. The result is a cycle where people are constantly trying to catch up to an arbitrary standard, instead of being encouraged to use their strengths as a foundation for success. This approach can drain motivation, especially for students who hear over and over again that they are behind or not meeting expectations. When strengths are overlooked, so are opportunities for growth and engagement. The roots of deficit thinking run deep. It's tied to the cultural myth that there is one right way to think, learn, and succeed. Anyone outside that narrow lane is automatically viewed as deficient. In reality, difference is not deficiency. It's simply variation. But when systems like schools or workplaces are built for only a specific type of mind or skill set, they make everyone who doesn't fit feel like they are failing. The problem isn't the individual, it's the system that measures everyone against a single mold. Shifting away from deficit thinking means flipping the script. It starts by intentionally identifying and naming strengths, even in the context of challenge. For example, instead of saying a student is disorganized, one might say they are an idea generator, and then work with them on strategies to organize those ideas. Rather than framing someone as not focused, you could recognize their ability to make quick connections between diverse topics. This doesn't ignore areas of difficulty. It simply refuses to let those difficulties define the person. Research on strengths-based education shows that when people are encouraged to build on their natural abilities, they're more engaged, more resilient, and more likely to achieve their goals. They feel seen for who they are, not just who they're not. This approach also has a ripple effect on self-esteem. When you see yourself as capable, you're more willing to take risks, try new things, and push through obstacles. You start to believe you have something valuable to offer, and that belief can be life-changing. Strengths-based thinking doesn't mean pretending challenges don't exist. It means viewing them as part of a fuller, more complex picture. A person can struggle in one area while thriving in another, and both truths can coexist. This perspective allows for solutions that are not just about remediation, but also about amplification. using what someone already does well as a lever for improvement in other areas. Deficit thinking shrinks a person's identity to a list of what they can't do. Strengths-based thinking expands it to include what they can and will do. The shift might seem subtle, but its impact is profound. It changes the stories we tell about people and the stories they tell about themselves. And in a world that often tries to measure worth by conformity to a single standard, those new stories have the power to redefine not just individual success, but also the culture's entire understanding of ability. The myth of normal is the belief that there exists a single correct way to be, think, learn, and succeed, a standard against which everyone is measured. It suggests that there's an average, and that average is not only common, but also ideal. Anyone who deviates from it is labeled as abnormal, deficient, or in need of fixing. This idea is deeply embedded in educational systems, workplace cultures, and even social expectations. It's why classrooms often expect all students to read at the same pace, why workplaces reward one type of communication style, and why certain paths to success are elevated while others are dismissed. The myth operates quietly, but it's powerful because it sets up a hierarchy of human value based on conformity to a fabricated standard. The danger of this myth is that it erases the richness of human diversity. By holding up a single model of normal, it implicitly devalues every other way of existing in the world. People whose strengths or abilities fall outside that narrow frame are often made to feel broken or less than, even when their differences bring valuable perspectives and skills. A student with dyslexia may excel in spatial reasoning or creative problem solving, yet still be judged as inadequate because their reading doesn't match the expected pace. Someone with ADHD might bring innovation and adaptability to a team, but be labeled as unfocused because they don't thrive in a rigid environment. The myth doesn't just misrepresent reality, it actively harms people by reducing their worth to how closely they match an invented ideal. This belief persists partly because it's convenient for systems designed to manage large groups. Standardization makes teaching, testing, and evaluating easier, but it also means these systems are built for the so-called average person. Those who fall outside the average aren't accommodated. They're expected to adapt or be left behind. The myth of normal also offers a false sense of control. It implies that if you fit the mold, you're doing things right and will be rewarded. In truth, the mold is arbitrary, shaped by cultural, historical, and institutional biases, rather than any objective truth about human ability. Challenging the myth requires acknowledging that variation is the rule, not the exception. Human brains, bodies, and ways of processing the world are inherently diverse, and this diversity is a strength, not a weakness. When systems are designed to honor and leverage that diversity, everyone benefits, not just those who fall outside the so-called norm. A classroom that accommodates different learning styles not only supports neurodivergent students, but also helps neurotypical students engage more deeply. A workplace that values multiple forms of communication and problem solving fosters innovation across the board. Rejecting the myth also means redefining success in broader terms. Instead of measuring worth by narrow benchmarks, we can create standards that reflect individual growth, creativity, and contribution. This doesn't mean abandoning expectations. It means setting expectations that recognize there are many valid ways to meet a goal. It's about valuing the process as much as the product and seeing difference as a vital part of progress rather than a deviation from it. The myth of normal survives because it's repeated so often and so subtly that it feels like common sense. But when we start asking, normal by whose definition, the illusion begins to crack. Once we see that the standard was invented, we realize it can be reinvented. And in that reinvention lies the possibility for systems, communities, and individuals to thrive not by erasing difference, but by embracing it as the most normal thing there is. Self-advocacy is the ability and willingness to speak up for your needs, rights, and preferences, especially in environments that may not naturally accommodate them. For neurodivergent individuals, it is a crucial skill because systems like schools and workplaces are often designed with only one kind of learner or worker in mind. Without self-advocacy, these environments can overlook or misunderstand the supports necessary for success. It's not about complaining or demanding special treatment. It's about ensuring you have what you need to participate and thrive on equal footing with others. It involves understanding yourself, identifying the barriers you face, and communicating those realities to the people who can help remove them. Developing self-advocacy begins with self-awareness. You can't effectively ask for what you need if you don't know what that is. This means taking time to reflect on your strengths, challenges, and the conditions under which you do your best work. A student who learns better with visual aids must first recognize that as a personal need before they can request them from a teacher. Someone who struggles with auditory processing might realize that having written instructions is essential for them to follow through successfully. The more clearly you can define these needs, the easier it becomes to express them in a way that others can understand and respect. Once self-awareness is in place, the next step is learning to communicate those needs confidently and constructively. This involves more than just stating a problem. It means explaining why the support is necessary and how it will help you perform to your potential. Effective self-advocacy frames accommodations not as advantages, but as tools for equity. For example, saying, I need extra time on tests because it allows me to demonstrate my understanding without being limited by my slower reading speed is far more persuasive than simply saying, I need more time. This approach fosters understanding rather than resistance. Self-advocacy also requires persistence. Requests aren't always granted right away, and some people may not understand or agree with them at first. In these situations, staying calm, professional, and consistent is important. Persistence doesn't mean being aggressive. It means standing firm in your needs while remaining open to dialogue and compromise. Sometimes, it also means knowing your legal rights and the policies in place to protect them, whether it's disability laws in education or workplace regulations that ensure fair treatment. Beyond individual benefits, practicing self-advocacy helps shift the culture around difference and accommodation. When you speak up, you not only secure the support you need, but also pave the way for others who might be hesitant to do the same. It can challenge misconceptions about what accommodations are and why they matter. Over time, this can contribute to environments where support is normalized and diversity is valued as a strength rather than seen as a burden. Ultimately, self-advocacy is both a personal survival skill and a collective act of change. It empowers you to navigate systems that may not be built with you in mind, while also signaling to those systems that they need to evolve. It's a reminder that having needs isn't a weakness. Hiding them is what limits you. Speaking up ensures that your abilities are seen, your potential is realized, and Your differences are recognized as part of the human spectrum, not as deviations from it. Resilience is the capacity to recover, adapt, and even grow stronger in the face of challenges, setbacks, or adversity. For neurodivergent individuals, resilience is often built not in spite of their differences, but because of the ways they've had to navigate environments that weren't designed with them in mind. Every time someone encounters a barrier, whether it's a rigid school system, a misunderstanding at work, or a stereotype, and finds a way through or around it, they are developing resilience. It's not about never feeling frustration or discouragement. It's about having the tools and mindset to keep moving forward despite those feelings. A key part of resilience is reframing setbacks as learning opportunities rather than as evidence of failure. This doesn't mean pretending challenges are easy or enjoyable. It means recognizing that each obstacle contains information that can guide your next steps. For example, if a study strategy doesn't work, the takeaway isn't, I'm bad at learning, but this approach doesn't fit me, so I'll try a different one. This shift in thinking keeps a person in problem-solving mode rather than defeat mode, which is essential for sustained progress. Another factor in resilience is building and maintaining a strong support system. While resilience often gets framed as an individual trait, in reality, it thrives in community. Friends, mentors, family members, and peers who understand and validate your experiences can provide both emotional encouragement and practical advice. For neurodivergent individuals, connecting with others who share similar challenges can be especially powerful. It offers proof that they are not alone and models examples of overcoming adversity. Self-care also plays a crucial role in resilience. Physical well-being, adequate rest, stress management, and hobbies that bring joy all help maintain the energy needed to face challenges. Without these elements, persistence becomes harder and burnout becomes more likely. In this sense, resilience isn't just about bouncing back from hardship. It's also about sustaining yourself so you're ready for whatever comes next. Resilience involves adaptability, being willing to change strategies when circumstances shift. Sticking rigidly to one plan in the face of repeated failure doesn't build strength. It builds frustration. Instead, resilience means holding on to your goals, but being flexible in how you achieve them. A neurodivergent student might realize that traditional note-taking doesn't work for them and switch to voice recordings, or a worker might use project-managed software to keep tasks organized instead of relying on memory. This ability to adapt turns challenges into opportunities for creativity. Finally, resilience grows when people recognize their own progress. It's easy to focus only on the distance still to travel and overlook how far you've already come. Taking time to acknowledge victories, no matter how small, builds confidence and fuels the motivation to keep going. Over time, resilience becomes less about surviving each challenge and more about trusting yourself to handle whatever comes. Knowing that your past experiences have prepared you to meet the future with strength, flexibility, and determination. Advocacy is the practice of actively standing up for your needs, rights, and potential, and it's a skill that becomes particularly crucial in environments that aren't automatically designed to support you. For neurodivergent individuals, self-advocacy can be the difference between struggling in silence and gaining the accommodations, understanding, and opportunities that allow them to thrive. It starts with self-awareness, knowing your strengths, your challenges, and the specific supports that help you succeed. Without this clarity, it's harder to communicate your needs in a way that others can understand and respond to effectively. An important aspect of advocacy is learning how to clearly and confidently communicate with different audiences. This means being able to explain not just what you need, but why it matters in the context of your goals, responsibilities, or contributions. For example, rather than simply asking for extra time on a test, a student might explain how processing information differently makes the accommodation essential for accurately demonstrating what they know. Framing needs in terms of outcomes can make others more receptive and willing to collaborate on solutions. Advocacy often requires navigating systems, schools, workplaces, medical environments that have established rules, policies, and hierarchies. Understanding those systems helps in identifying who to approach, what language to use, and what documentation or evidence might be required. It also helps to know the legal rights and protections that apply in your context, whether through disability legislation, workplace accommodations laws, or educational mandates. Knowledge of these rights provides a foundation for advocating, not from a position of asking for favors, but from a position of requesting what is already guaranteed. Confidence in advocacy doesn't always come naturally, especially if past experiences have involved being dismissed or misunderstood. This is why practice matters. Starting small, advocating in low-stakes situations, rehearsing conversations, or writing requests down before delivering them can build the skills and courage needed for bigger moments. Over time, advocacy becomes less intimidating because it shifts from confrontation to collaboration, focused on problem solving rather than conflict. A critical part of effective advocacy is persistence. Systems can be slow to respond, and initial requests might be met with resistance. Staying polite but firm, following up consistently, and documenting communications can prevent issues from being ignored. Persistence also sends a signal that your needs are non-negotiable and that you are committed to securing the tools that allow you to perform at your best. Finally, advocacy is not just about the individual. It can extend into helping others who face similar barriers. Sharing experiences, mentoring peers, and pushing for systemic change transforms self-advocacy into community advocacy. This creates environments that are more inclusive for everyone, reducing the burden on each individual to fight their battles alone. By developing advocacy skills, people not only secure their own success, but also contribute to building a culture where diversity of minds, abilities, and approaches is recognized and valued.